Hey, this is Russ with Winged Saber Historical Fencing. In response to your many queries, what kind of gear should you start out with when you start doing saber stuff? Well, it's not a secret. I kind of worked with Christian Darcy at Purple Heart to make these guys. I like these guys a lot. But let me walk through what they're about, what they're useful for, and how they fit into the universe of training. There's about to be a crashing noise as I put a whole bunch of sabers down. No, it balanced. Yes, awesome. This is what I trained with in Hungary for years and years and years. There are some corners of the internet in which I'm known as the get a stick guy. HEMA training does not have to be expensive. Not only that, you should be able to do it dirt cheap. This is a fancy stick because I happen to know somebody who was a smith and he put nice cross guards on our sticks. Go us, it was awesome. Here is another stick, significantly less fancy. Sticks have two super advantages to them. The first is the obvious one, they're dirt damn cheap. The second is, they don't flex for squat, but they've got big cross section. And that means you have to be careful when you thrust. And yes, that can induce training artifacts if you're not careful. Since we don't thrust on a lunge, it's very easy to be safe thrusting with these as long as people have some kind of padding over the chest. But because there's no way a penetration is going to happen, unless you're doing some real Halloween level BS, you don't necessarily need an incredible amount of really thick, dense fabric to prevent penetrations. If I'm training with something like this, that fabric becomes mandatory. That's why HEMA has so many Newton-rated jackets and insists on them, because foil blades break and kill people. And these things, especially if they don't have a button on them, can penetrate loose cloth. Dense cloth, no problem. Leather, no problem. Well, the stick, you don't have to worry about that. You can throw on a plastron or an apron and go to town. You're good. You can start with a friend and two sticks. If you have special material skills, you can start with a fancy stick. This one's old. I've used the hell out of it, so this has a string wrap I've put on it. It's fine unless it's in the rain because wood glue gets sticky in the rain. Here comes that crashing noise I warned you about. Clang! If you are just starting out and you have a bunch of you, get a boffer. What's the advantage a boffer gives you? Well, the blade work isn't so fine, but it's really safe, and it requires almost nothing in the way of gear. You've got crumple zone up here so you can thrust really safely, and if it's a lightweight boffer, it has lots of air resistance, so it handles like a heavy saber even though it weighs nothing. If you're like me and have some more delicately built ladies in your school who simply can't handle a 1,000-gram saber for 2 hours, having lightweight trainers is a really good idea. You can buy these if you don't like doing really terrible crafting jobs like I do. They cost 40 or 50 bucks. We start to get more expensive. You can bend a piece of rattan and make it uniform. And that's where the advantage of this comes in. If you're working in a group and you use a synthetic, you're basically using a big plastic stick. But you are using a big plastic stick that happens to be uniform all across the class. It's all the same weight, it's all the same shape, it's all the same curve. Nobody's gonna get punctured, so you can work with more casual and less expensive training gear, personal protective equipment. And when you perform techniques, nobody suddenly becomes an outlier because their saber or their stick happens to have different curves. If you've tried to coach a class where everybody has their own specific steel saber and everybody likes their version so they all look different, coaching fine technique can get to be a real pain in the ass. Am I allowed to say ass on YouTube? In this case, I'm going to guess I am. Doesn't matter, we're not monetized and never will be, so we can get away with it, yay. Go ahead, demonetize me. Having a uniform, affordable training tool makes coaching much easier. Is this inferior compared to steel for learning fine technique? Yes, obviously. Does it offer great hand protection? No. And for drilling, that's not a big deal. It's also 1/8 the cost of a good quality steel saber. And that matters too, because if you're outfitting a club on the cheap because you're not sure you want to stay with the weapon, you're not sure how long you want to do saber, and you're going to have beginner students come in, so you need indestructible loaner gear, synthetics are not an embarrassment. They are a real asset to a club. And if you are not stratospherically wealthy and well-heeled to where you can afford to have students breaking blades, drilling all the time, you should consider adding these to your school's repertoire. Your other option are really, really cheap sabers. And you can get one of these for something like $100 off Amazon right now. I've modified mine. This is an aluminum guard. It's been beat to hell, as you can see, and my students tear the hell out of it with strangers every time we have a saber play date. The problem is that these things are crowbars. You can't see it on camera, but I've already ground the hell out of this. I will push this through my hand before that flexes. This is unsafe. This needs a button on it. And even with a button, it's going to hit on the thrust almost as hard as that stick did. Maybe harder because the surface area is going to be smaller. If you get a cheap saber, you shouldn't have to work that hard to bend it. Take a belt sander and sand the hell out of this part of the blade until it actually has a decent flex. So if you're equipping a club on the cheap and you go $100 a pop for these guys, understand there are real and honest safety concerns that have nothing whatsoever to do with penetrating fabric, but to do with inflicting blunt trauma injury through somebody's padding. Because this thrust is going to hit on a narrow surface area, call it almost a square inch if you add a button to the end of this, with all your body weight behind it, and it doesn't flex for squat. Compared to that, synthetics are very, very safe. So I recommend putting them in the mix, and when students are on a budget and they want the $100 special, walk them through what they need to do to turn them into safe and effective bouting tools. All right, have fun, go do the thing.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
How come you didn't talk about the ones that we got made in Ukraine, I believe it was, or was it Poland?
We can do a follow-up with that, absolutely. Okay, and as a follow-up, Roman asked me a quick question. Why didn't I talk about these guys that we use all the time and that you see me using in the videos all the time? And the answer is, the guy who makes it, Michał Sagowski in Poland, I'm not sure if he's still in business or not. I haven't heard from him in a while. But these are extremely affordable. You can order them from him directly. They also flex. Medieval Armorer, Michał Sagowski. There are other much more expensive blades on the market that are in many ways much, much better for bouting. Many people don't want to bout against this thing because it's built for lightweight boohurt use. You can't do a pro fight with this, but this is a big old honking piece of steel. If you see me with these, sometimes Beer City Blades carries them, these are a good drilling alternative because your students won't tear them up and you won't break blades. If you can get them, great. If you can't get them, talk to somebody else, or in the meantime, go with the synthetics and then work your way up to a nicer training blade. Avoid the $100 going to stab you blade if you can. You remember what I was doing with the other saber? This already has significant flex for no effort whatsoever. Look for that when you go into an inexpensive piece of steel. Every training saber should flex, period. If it doesn't flex, it's a weapon, not a training tool. All right. Thank you much. Go have a good one. We've got more videos and content coming, so if you liked what you saw and it was useful for you, please stab the like button, /subscribe, and punch the little bell icon so that you're notified immediately when new content comes available. Thanks, and go do the thing.